Right, so let's summarize our Cornerstone lesson for this week. July 27th is the week in focus here. Our title again, Be Swayed and Besieged. Let's go with this one. So this week's lesson exposes a major flaw in Zedekiah's leadership, and that flaw is inaction. His moral courage registered low on the scale for leaders, and the result was horrendous in terms of the damage to his family and to his people. The options were very simple. So, one, he was supposed to have submitted to Babylonian rule and live in peace for 70 years. Okay? Or he could have resisted and evoked the force of Nebuchadnezzar's might. Zedekiah heard the words of the Lord through Jeremiah, but unconverted leaders and false prophets threatened him. And Zedekiah listened to God only in private. Because Zedekiah could not act on his convictions, the great walls of Jerusalem fell, the glorious temple of Jehovah was sacked, pillaged, and many were killed in wake of the senseless butchery. As believers in God, there are times when our choices will have consequences, and those consequences are uncertain and sometimes even frightening. But far more dangerous is not making the right choice. Thinking a better option will emerge. Ellen White states that while he had no fixed purpose to do evil, he did not have the backbone to stand boldly for the right. If Zedekiah's life teaches us anything today, it is that God's word is to be trusted, even if it doesn't make us feel safe. Perhaps we will obey God only in the pivotal moments when we practice faithfulness in the ordinary and not so pivotal moments. So the more we practice to obey Him, even in the little things, when the big things come around, we'll obey Him then. Now, one of the things that stands out to me is a part of the lesson that said that you're to pray for the place that I'm sending you to, and you must allow your children to have children there and all of that, because the peace of this place means peace for you. Can you imagine praying for your enemy? Can you imagine praying for your captor? That is like a slave praying for the slave master that he would prosper. If the slave master prospers, that's not going to augur well for the slave, right? He's going to take on more slaves, right? But that was the situation here. Now, in this lesson, what is it that we should know? We should know that loyalty to God will at times be risky, but always right. It might be risky. You can eventually lose your life. Think about the Hebrew boys who said, listen, we're not going to bow regardless of whatever happens. We're not. That was a risk, and it could have turned the other way, because when they were thrown into they were thrown into the fire, but when they were thrown, they were delivered. We should feel a sense of peace that comes from exercising faith in God. So the more we exercise faith, the greater the sense of peace we'll have, having the evidence that God will take care of us. And we should determine to live publicly our personal convictions about God. So eventually, there's coming a point, when you can't hide anymore. You're going to be on one side or the other. This lesson is linked with our fundamental beliefs, and it's linked with fundamental belief number 24. And that one says Christ's ministry in the heavenly sanctuary. There's a sanctuary in heaven, the true tabernacle that the Lord has set up and not humans. In it, Christ ministers on our behalf, making available to believers the benefit of his atoning sacrifice offered once for all on the cross. It declares that those who have remained loyal to God shall receive his kingdom. The completion of this ministry of Christ will mark the close of human probation before the second advent. So even though we don't see Jesus now, we can rest assured that he is They're working on our behalf. Now, some of the texts that go along with this: Leviticus chapter 16, Numbers 14 verse 34, Ezekiel 4 verse 6, Daniel 7 verses 9 to 27 and 8 13, Hebrews 1 verse 3, Hebrews 2 verse 16 and 17, and so on. In a class at a public university, Jamie was uncomfortable in his seat as the philosophy professor mocked Christian faith with snide remarks such as, "Come on, people, any thinking person can see that faith in God is a crutch created by humans who must believe that someone is in control." He would stare at the class waiting for a response. Some would nod in agreement and others stared in disbelief. Still others never made eye contact and simply took notes, hoping not to be called on to respond. The professor would throw down controversial statements like gauntlets, daring anyone to take him on. The sassy teacher's comments went uncontested until Jamie took the challenge, choked down his fear, and spoke up. "Professor, I disagree. In fact, I believe in God not because I have to, but because everything I have experienced gives evidence that God is real." The teacher had not expected anyone to respond so confidently. Many in the class noticed as well and eagerly waited for the conversation to escalate into an all-out argument. The teacher tried to discredit Jamie intellectually and even intimidate him with questions about proof. Nevertheless, the more cynical the professor became, the more the class began to show curious support for Jamie. The teacher moved quickly to change the subject, getting in the last word. But Jamie's words struck a chord in a few classmates. As they left the building, they expressed their appreciation for the way he stood up to the teacher. They were believers as well, and were equally uncomfortable with their own inability to respond. During the next few weeks, many students gained the moral courage to share their convictions in class. This surprised the professor so much that he noticeably toned down his bitter rhetoric. When in your life have you witnessed someone boldly stand for God, not knowing how others would respond? Maybe at school, maybe at home, maybe at work. When have you ever had to make your loyalty to God clear to others? And this can be in many ways. It could be a girl who is standing up for her purity. Boyfriend out there and saying, "Listen man, everybody's doing it, so come on, let's do it together. Should we be left behind?" And she is going to be loyal to God over anybody else. Think about Joseph saying, "How can I do this wicked thing?" It could be at work. Somebody's gonna take some money and you're the person who has to sign off on it and make it pass through a certain account that nobody is tracking and so on. Are you going to stop? What will it be? It could be somebody bullying someone, and as a Christian you know that that's not just. How does that come out, right? So in every age, opportunities come to us as believers to take a stand and boldly remind the world that God's word is real, right, and true. Whether it's speaking up for God in class or bravely obeying God's word when others are sure to laugh and ridicule you, there is a time to stand. Most of the time, it might be risky or even frightening. So as we read the story of Zedekiah, we can see that we need to believe his word, even if it is not something that is going to be pleasing for us. So Zedekiah was not really bent on evil. In fact, he kept reaching out to Jeremiah for insight. He knew what was right and believed he should do it, but not enough to actually do it. Our world is looking for leadership, people who have a clear sense of right and wrong, of what is true and what is false. Even though some are cynical, the hearts of people are watching and searching for guidance from God. There are many who live their lives with with regret, not about what they did, but about what they did not do. How do you want to live your life as a believer in God? There is Zedekiah's way, which is to play it safe. Hope for an easy way. Don't take the risk of being hated or misunderstood. Perhaps you can see the determined look on the faces of Bible heroes who stood in face of adversity and declared their loyalty to God. Noah, Moses, Elijah, Daniel, Esther, John the Baptist, Paul. The list goes on and on of people who were faithful. Where is the list of those who remained silent? But how about you? Will you be swayed and besieged by inaction? Or will you stand and be counted faithful to God?